This week, Eddie Murphy's new Beverly Hills Cop partner, Joseph Gordon-Levitt. American Pie's Jason Biggs. Plus from Fancy Dance, Lily Gladstone and Isabel DeRoy Olsen. CBS Mornings this week.
Standing ovation.
We'll be here all week.
Tonight, Eye on America, how public libraries are turning the page to better serve their communities. Then, the path of destruction from Tropical Storm Alberto. And New York's governor on enforcing a social media law aimed at protecting minors on the
say this guy is not up to the job, that he is not understanding all these difficult issues and able to perform with full strength, then I have to say you don't know what you're talking about.
I thought it was a fantastic idea because this way we have a way of getting money into the hands of people that need it.
Was the starting center fielder for the team in 1948 that wins the Negro League World Series. 2 years later, he was in the major leagues.
I'm Caitlin Huey-Burns in Washington. Welcome to America Decides. The countdown is on to the first presidential debate, and both candidates are working to fine-tune their messages with just 1 week to go from today. President Biden now is heading to Camp David tonight to huddle with advisors, and former President Trump is holding a series of private meetings with senators, policy experts, and other allies. And the debate stage will only have 2 podiums officially. RFK Jr. has failed to qualify. The independent candidate did not meet CNN's ballot and polling thresholds for that June 27th debate. So let's bring in our own debate watchers, Bob Costa and Weijia Jiang, joining us here. Weijia, I want to start with you at the White House because, as we mentioned, the president is preparing to go to Camp David tonight. What more can you tell us about how he's preparing? What are his plans there?
Well, Caitlin, we expect that he will be there for several days, huddled with his closest advisors, everyone from his chief of staff to members of his speech writing team, because this is not just about debating Donald Trump. This is about making sure his message has broken through. Back in 2020, of course, on the debate stage, at center stage was Trump's record. And now it's Biden's, which, of course, Trump will try to attack. But the campaign really sees this as an opportunity to remind voters of everything the president has accomplished under his watch in the past nearly 4 years. And so, sure, there will be a lot of preparation for mapping out what they anticipate to hear from Trump, but they'll also be preparing what they want to get across on their own, on the offensive. And so this is going to be really intense debate sessions, much like we saw in 2020. Everything from planning sessions to actually practicing with somebody who will ultimately stand in for the former President Trump, who we don't know who that is quite yet, but there will be that sort of role playing so that President Biden can anticipate everything.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see who they choose to play Donald Trump there this year. Bob, Weijia was mentioning that President Biden is kind of looking to go on the offense here and try to use this as kind of a platform to talk about his policies. How is Donald Trump thinking about this debate? He likes to say that he doesn't need the kind of preparation that the Biden team is talking about. But how do you think he's looking at this?
There's so much discussion about style, personality, mute buttons. But when I'm talking to my top sources close to President Biden and also those close to former President Trump, it's evident that this debate is seen by both campaigns as an opportunity for their respective candidates to make a real appeal to working voters across the country. Just yesterday, at America Decides, we spoke to Senator Bernie Sanders, who's in Ohio today, making his pitch on the minimum wage. You're going to see at the debate, I'm told by sources, overtures to working voters nationwide. From Trump talking about getting rid of any kind of taxation on tips for employees who are working jobs like at a Las Vegas restaurant or a casino or any restaurant nationwide. And from President Biden, you're going to hear an emphasis on his many trips to Detroit and Philadelphia, his support of the UAW and labor unions nationwide. You're going to hear about the American Rescue Plan. You're going to hear about all the efforts to provide more infrastructure in this country. It's a battle of who is really standing there for the worker, who is seen as kind of anti-establishment, even though they're titans of their own political establishments, who's there in the trenches with the workers as they deal with all of the turbulence in the American economy. Because so many workers, when we're out there on the campaign trail, they know the stock market's at a record high. People who have investments feel pretty good, but those who don't have major investments are still feeling that inflationary pain, and they want to see who's a fighter.
Yeah, and even as they know who these two candidates are, this is such a group that's up for grabs. And I'm glad you mentioned the tips, because we're going to be talking with Ed O'Keefe, who was just in Las Vegas later this hour. Weijia, let's talk a little bit about those kind of ground rules that Bob was alluding to there. They include muting microphones and some other items. How is the Biden team kind of thinking about that, if at all, in terms of the rules as they plot their strategy here?
Well, CNN, which is, of course, hosting the debate, actually reported just today that the Biden camp won the coin toss that will determine a couple things. It will determine the order of who gets to make the closing argument and where these two candidates will be physically standing on the stage. And so the Biden campaign chose to decide about that location. And so President Biden will be to the right of the podium, and that's going to impact how viewers see him on their screen. And that means that former President Trump, I should say, will get the last word in the closing argument. And so that was a strategic decision made on the part of the Biden campaign. And as you mentioned, in terms of the muted microphones, the fact that there will be no audience participation, these are designed to really allow the viewers who are consuming this at home to focus on each candidate and what they are saying. As you know very well, in past debates, especially when these two men faced off before, there was a little bit of a circus-like atmosphere. There was a lot of interruptions and cheers, just like you would expect at any live event. So these rules really allow the viewer to hone in on the words coming out of each candidate's mouth.
Yeah, and Weijia, you mentioned each candidate there. Two candidates, Bob, RFK Jr., as we mentioned, will not be on the debate stage officially. What do you make of that kind of absence? And were either campaigns really focused on him anyway?
RFK Jr. will not be on the debate stage, but you can expect him to have a presence there, politically speaking. Both the Biden campaign and the Trump campaign know that there are many voters nationwide who have grievances about the economy. They feel a bit paranoid about the country, especially after the pandemic. There is anxiety among many voters in certain states about vaccine mandates. RFK Jr. has not generated enormous traction with his campaign, but he's generated some traction and been able to get on the ballot in certain states. They're not going to maybe mention Robert F. Kennedy Jr. by name, but they know they need to reach voters who might be traditionally so-called non-voters, people who don't participate in the political process, aren't well informed about the policy positions of Trump and Biden. And how can they make a real appeal to people who might never tune into politics, be a little bit intrigued by RFK Jr.'s name, his anti-establishment persona? How can they try to win some of those voters over? Because those voters in a close race in Michigan or Pennsylvania or Wisconsin could be crucial.
Yeah, I was thinking exactly about those margins. And I was recently in Arizona where that margin was just 10,000 votes last time around, and talking to some voters who don't like either candidate and saw RFK Jr. as at least someone to vote for. So we'll see whether and how he addresses, either candidate addresses them. The other kind of looming issue over Biden over the past week or so, Weijia, has been his son Hunter, of course, now convicted in Delaware recently. Do you know if the campaign is expecting to kind of field attacks from former President Trump on his son?
So in other words, is the former president planning to attack Hunter Biden? And what we've seen already, Caitlin, is a real drawback from that compared to 2020. Even when Hunter Biden was just convicted a couple weeks ago, he was mum about it, even though they sent out a statement that was pretty vague and not directly attacking Hunter Biden, because I think they realized how it backfired, because you're talking about somebody's son. And so on the flip side of that, the Biden team believes that, they've handled this exactly how they wanted to, which was to stress that this is not the president who was convicted. It is his son. So then they believe the question becomes, how has President Biden dealt with this as a father? And they believe that he has shown support. Every chance they get, they try to connect with the American public to say, you guys know what this is like. I'm sure you know somebody who's struggled with addiction, who has struggled with something comparable to this. And so they've really tried to show the empathy from President Biden. And by the way, Caitlin, the other big difference between now and back then, when Trump was attacking Hunter Biden almost every other sentence, which is that, you know, Trump himself is now a convicted felon. And so he probably doesn't want to draw more attention to that, even though I imagine President Biden will be doing that quite a bit.
Yeah, that's notable, Weija, especially since we've seen a new ad from the Biden team pointing out that their opponent is a convicted felon. Very interesting reporting. Look forward to both of you continuing that next week. Bob and Weija, thank you so much. And Republican voters in Virginia's 5th congressional district are still waiting to see who prevailed in Tuesday's primary contests. CBS News has been unable to project a winner in this race. This race, of course, has been between State Senator John McGuire and House Freedom Caucus Chair Bob Good. McGuire, who actually declared victory on election night, currently holds a 313-vote lead. Every vote counts, guys. In the state, if the victor is ahead by less than 1 percentage point, either candidate can request a recount. Remember, Congressman Bob Good is in the spotlight because he did not gain former President Trump's endorsement because he supported Ron DeSantis in the Republican primaries for president earlier this year. And coming up, can Hamas be defeated? A rift grows between Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his military spokesman. That, as a U.S. official weighs in on Israel's war plan. You're streaming America Decides.
Coming up, our series. Wait a minute. Tom, is that you working the camera?
Keep leaning out of your close-up.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
I had progressively fallen deeper into the world of online sports betting.
The risk is the rush.
What do you think is driving the spike in popularity?
I think it's legality.
If it's legal, I'm going to use it. There are ways to bet when you are 18.
We've created an epidemic of child gambling.
You can't walk into a male dormitory in a college campus without sports betting happening.
It's America's most neglected problem.
I used sports betting as a way to escape, when in reality, I'm choosing self-destruction. Whatever I had left, it was gone.
The purpose of the industry is to get you to play to extinction. And that means until all your money is gone.
Go to the ends of the earth. Reach for the stars.
Yeah, I just took off. That kind of thing.
Oh, that's pretty good. Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
That desired farm is a wonderful place to raise children, and it still is.
Promises broken.
Black Americans have been the target of racism and discrimination pretty much from the time they acquired ownership in the land.
Costing black farmers hundreds of billions in generational wealth.
They did everything to make sure we were run off that land.
But communities are uniting to continue the fight.
Collective ownership is powerful.
To keep their land and their dreams alive.
To watch my children play on land that we own means everything.
So land is power.
Most definitely.
40 Acres and a Mule, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
People with developmental disabilities were once sequestered by the hundreds of thousands in institutions.
Many of our fellow citizens are suffering tremendously because lack of attention, lack of imagination, lack of adequate manpower.
Disability activists have since torn down barriers blocking them from living at home or in the community.
We conclude that Title II of the ADA requires states to provide community-based treatment for persons with mental disabilities.
But of the 16,000 people who remain in state-operated institutions, Half are in 5 states, and Illinois is one of them.
I don't want to live in the institution. It makes me feel discriminated against.
Do you think there are people living in institutions in Illinois that don't need to be living there?
Yeah, because they're proving it as soon as they get out.
A U.S. official tells CBS News the Israelis, quote, haven't come close to achieving their objective of destroying Hamas. And they criticized Israel's current strategy as, quote, a recipe for continuous war. These comments come a day after the Israeli military's top spokesperson said that Hamas cannot be destroyed and that Netanyahu's government must find an alternative to the militant group in Gaza. CBS News chief foreign affairs correspondent and Face the Nation moderator Margaret Brennan joins me now. Margaret, great to see you. Thanks for being here. So let's talk about Netanyahu. His top advisors met with Biden's top advisors, Jake Sullivan, of course, and Antony Blinken. How is the Biden administration assessing all of this? Do they have any indications? Are they giving any indications that an end to this war may be in sight?
U.S. officials have been pressing Benjamin Netanyahu for an answer to the question of what comes next since October. And so now you're just hearing that frustration spill out into the public space, not just from U.S. officials, by the way, also from Benny Gantz, member of the War Cabinet, who resigned because he said that the prime minister failed to describe anything other than perpetual war. And he didn't come up with a plan for the day after. The defense minister stood up and said, tell me who's going to run this place, because a military occupation wasn't something that the Israeli military, and you heard the military spokesperson reflect that sentiment as well. That defense minister is expected here in Washington next week. So this frustration really is spilling over, and it matters in terms of the assessment of success. Like, how do you defeat and destroy Hamas? Netanyahu has never directly answered that question in terms of what the Biden administration had been looking for. No specifics of who comes in and runs that gate, who comes in and administers the aid. Do you want a full occupation? Because the far right of his coalition government does argue for that. And if he doesn't want it, then he should say that. But you also have the Secretary of State spinning his wheels, traveling the globe with other Arab leaders, with other world leaders, talking about how to pay for and plan for the 25-mile strip that is Gaza.
Yeah, and at the same time, you also have, everything going on possibly with Lebanon. I mean, Israel's military has approved a plan for a possible invasion into Lebanon. What exactly are they preparing for? What are the conditions there? And again, I mean, the Biden administration, another example of them trying to ease those tensions, obviously a lot for Antony Blinken.
There's extreme concern within the Biden administration right now about where we are in the possibility of this new front really becoming explosive. And this is the showdown that the U.S. had been fearful of, because Hezbollah is really the strongest paramilitary group backed by Iran. They put some of those smaller militias to shame, the ones who attack our service people in Syria and Iraq. Hezbollah has incredible weaponry and has prepared for a war with Israel. Israel has prepared for a war with Hezbollah for years, not like the surprise attack we just saw with Hamas. So the U.S. has been trying to slow roll this for some time. Back in October, President Biden did get Netanyahu to hold back on launching that front and launched his envoy, Amos Hochstein, to go try to do this diplomatic agreement, to establish a border, to establish a buffer zone. Because after October 7th, when the rocket attacks started picking up with Hezbollah, they basically cleared out southern Lebanon and northern Israel. People have been displaced. They haven't been able to go home. That's a political problem. And so the idea was, through a negotiation, you could carve out that buffer zone. But now those talks haven't achieved what the Israeli government had been looking for. And the Lebanese government's extremely weak. So it's the U.S. trying to be the midwife to find a way other than a full-on assault. And we have the defense minister coming here from Israel next week to meet at the Pentagon, and this is going to be a big part of that conversation. But Amos Hochstein, the envoy, flying back and forth, really trying to lower the tension and avoid this by brokering a deal. And the U.S. doesn't talk directly to Hezbollah. They have to talk through emissaries. This is complicated stuff.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
You kind of need a map to figure out where everybody is location-wise. And obviously, Netanyahu is expected to come here next month. So a lot to look forward to there. I want to move over.
And U.S. officials have said, don't come unless you have a plan for the day after.
Exactly. And a lot of some Democrats saying that they're going to boycott it altogether.
Right.
Obviously, a lot of politics for them there. Let's move over to Ukraine because the U.S. announced today that it's redirecting all of its orders for these Patriot air defense systems to Ukraine. What kind of impact would this make in the war, if any?
Well, you've had President Zelensky say he needs to be able to defend cities. He specifically wanted 7 Patriots. And if you remember at that press conference, he stood next to President Biden, and President Biden said, I'll get you. They're coming. And that they had plans for about 5 at that point. What the U.S. just did, because the U.S. is a supplier to so many countries who buy weapons made here, is say they jump to the front of the line. So they're going to get the things you ordered. We'll make it back to you. But it's the interceptors for these Patriots, which help knock down incoming, particularly in cities. Kharkiv right now is one of the places that they're most concerned about, but to put them in other areas as well, to defend, by the way, at times the civilian population, because Russia continues to target civilian areas. So this is another way, instead of gifting money or weapons, it is saying, here, we'll give you what you need. And they carved out some of the countries and, I should say, customers who don't have to wait. Taiwan, for example, gets to continue to receive these Patriot interceptors because they need them as well with the possible aggression from China.
Yeah, a lot to get to. We didn't even get to Putin's tour of Asia.
There's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on here. So we will look forward to your show coming up on Sunday. Thank you very much, Margaret. We appreciate it.
When I get to office, we are going to not charge taxes on tips.
The battle for working voters. Can Donald Trump's tip pledge get labor on his side? You're streaming America Decides.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
It didn't seem like anything could happen, because nothing ever happens in East Palestine, but it did.
Authorities released toxic fumes from 5 derailed train cars.
Resident, please evacuate. Acute bronchitis due to chemical fumes.
Did you ever have these problems before the derailment?
No, ma'am.
This neighborhood's not safe no more.
We can assure the community that there's not vinyl chloride entering their communities.
Then why are there so many people feeling these various symptoms of bloody noses or difficulty breathing, bronchitis?
That's a hard question to answer.
We're talking about one of the most blatant releases of a mixture of some of the most toxic chemicals that we've seen in America.
I feel like now I have a duty to warn other communities. If my daughter has to watch me die of cancer, at least it saves someone else.
This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform.
Or you can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we
unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be.
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Dragon capsule here in space.
Sightseers in space, the thrill of a lifetime.
Seeing the Earth from space, it was so exhilarating.
But the risks that come with the territory.
There have been 4 fatal accidents. That's a 1% fatal accident rate.
Might make you look before you launch.
If you had 1 out of 100 airplanes falling out of the sky, we'd have a public crisis.
Space tourism, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Welcome back to America Decides. Earlier this month, you may remember in Las Vegas, former President Donald Trump said that he'll work to eliminate taxes on tips if he's elected to a second term. Of course, that proposal would require approval from Congress. And Trump's Republican allies on the Hill have already been quick to show that they're willing to do so, at least introducing legislation. Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz and Thomas Massie are pushing a proposal in the House that would do just that. And Senator Ted Cruz and Steve Daines, who is the head of the NRSC, responsible for electing Republicans to the Senate, they're also introducing some legislation in the Senate as well. CBS News senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe joins us now. And Ed, I should note you are fresh off the plane from Las Vegas, where you were talking to people. So thanks for being with us and timely for this conversation. I want to get to what you found there in a moment, but let's first start with what exactly would this do? And this is federal income, right?
So if you're a waiter, a bartender, a bellman, somebody in the service industry who gets tips for the work you do, your federal income and payroll tax would conceivably no longer exist. Although looking at the 2 proposals that were put out this week by House and Senate Republicans, there's actually a little difference. That's the kind of money overall that funds Social Security, Medicare, and other social safety net programs, so they'd take a hit. It's believed if it were to be enacted the way Trump is proposing it, it'd be about a $250 billion hit to federal revenue over the next decade, which is sizable, but not that big when you consider that the Trump tax cuts that are set to expire next year are $4 trillion. So a drop in the bucket compared to all that. But it's a popular campaign season proposal to drop suddenly in a state where 1 in 4 private sector workers are in the service industry. And the idea that they'd get to keep conceivably thousands of dollars is music to their ears.
Yeah, I mean, and you were talking to people in the service industry. Obviously, candidates go to Vegas all the time, not to play slots, but to talk to these kinds of people, because this is such a coveted group. Had they heard about this proposal? I know you and I talk a lot about whether voters are paying attention right now, and what are they thinking about it?
You might say the candidates go to the roll the dice. But maybe not play the slots. Here all week. They had heard about it. And take a listen to what one bar owner and one bartender think of it.
For my workers, definitely would help. We are a small business, so it's not like you're dealing with these big restaurants where it would impact them a lot. But I mean, as for myself, I think it would be a little less paperwork for myself. For my employees, maybe they would enjoy it. They would like it.
Yeah, I think it is a great idea.
Makes you more likely to vote for him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which you were going to do anyway.
Yep, it just solidifies it.
So Lori there is a good example of somebody who, on some nights, makes hundreds of dollars in tips. Might be through the credit card, might be in cash. So conceivably, over the course of the year, you're racking up tens of thousands in a really good year, you know, potentially 6 figures in tips. The question would be, okay, I get to keep that money now and it's not taxed. She asked, how would I be able to prove to a bank or to a loan officer that I have that money?
How do you report
if it wasn't reported on my W-2, right?
Yeah.
How do I prove that I have the money to buy that car?
Right.
If it's not on paper, so would it have to be? And this was only after sort of just talking about it ever so briefly with us that it kind of dawned on her, wait a second, it might mean less paperwork, but it might conceivably mean less purchasing power if I can't prove to a bank or to a car dealer or to a broker that I can buy, you know, that new appliance or a new car or a new house.
Yeah, harder to prove that income, right? So you mentioned too, kind of the reason that Trump was talking about this. Tell us a little bit about kind of where you were in Nevada and why this group of voters essentially is so critical to both candidates who are competing for the working.
Well, I mean, they're 1 in 4 service workers or 1 in 4 private sector workers in the state. Biggest concentration of service workers in the country, obviously there in the Vegas area. They're women, minority, young, old, cut across the spectrum. He's looking to cut into Joe Biden's margins, right? Well, what better way to do that than go for blue-collar workers who are inclined to vote for Democrats? The Culinary Workers Union, for example, that organizes a lot of them, says this Trump idea is unrealistic, that they think that their members are smart enough to know the difference between, as they said, real solutions and wild campaign promises from a convicted felon. The Biden campaign kind of scoffs at this idea as well. But it is potentially good politics to at least demonstrate this. Democrats would also turn around and say, you could have done this during the 4 years you were president. You could have joined us in asking that the minimum wage for tipped workers get increased, which actually would do more over time. Instead, you're having House and Senate Republicans propose pretty thin ideas here. 3 pages from Ted Cruz, 6 pages from Thomas Massie and Matt Gaetz. And we'll see. One thing to keep in mind, the House version would cover all taxes that any worker makes. Notably, the Cruz version talks only about cash tips. What I learned from Lori and what you would hear from others is that these days, most of your tips are coming through the credit card when you sit there at the cash register or when you get handed the thing while you're finishing up your meal. Cash, maybe not as much. In this case, Cruz is saying just cash.
Oh, interesting distinction.
There is some debate among Republicans. Democrats mostly reject it outright.
And we'll see if Republicans even sign on to this, because they're really concerned about, adding to the deficit. Ed O'Keefe, great reporting. Thank you. We'll stay tuned for your coming pieces. And speaking of that presidential race, Fox News has a new presidential poll out, and Donald Trump isn't too happy about it. We'll take a look at the numbers next on America Decides.
Washington is the seat of power. National security, foreign policy, global economics, every story comes through Washington in some way. We bring some of the most powerful voices in America to the table. We don't just ask the questions, you have to go deeper. We try to understand what's at the heart of the issue we're talking about, to then come forward with solutions.
Face the Nation on CBS.
The justices ruled that Harvard and the University of North Carolina violated the Constitution.
In the aftermath of the Supreme Court decision to end affirmative action in college admissions, uncertainty sets in for some students of color.
Affirmative action really gave us an equal opportunity.
CBS Reports explores the historic decision and what it means for those chasing an opportunity to change their lives.
I knew that college was the ticket to break this cycle.
The end of affirmative action, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Okay, let's go.
You guys good?
Hey.
All right, we good?
Keep going. It's the clock. It's ticking.
Off we go.
60 minutes. 60 minutes.
60 minutes.
It's time for 60 Minutes, Sundays on CBS.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
They can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7 that is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable. The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We are about to see American weapons in the hands of Mexican cartels.
A gun pipeline to Mexico.
We are arming the cartels.
100%, no doubt about it.
Happening right under our noses.
Who's doing something about this? Nobody.
A CBS Reports exclusive.
Most Americans have no idea that we are effectively arming the enemy next door.
This is the story the American people need to know.
Arming cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides, taking you inside American democracy.
The most important stories on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis.
You're going to hear a lot of reporting.
It is clearly a pivotal moment.
Gun control, the economy, education.
Both sides of the political aisle fight it out for power.
Bringing you the analysis that you need.
Thoughtfully, with context.
Be part of the conversation.
On CBS News Streaming.
Welcome to America Decides, Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern. And welcome back to America Decides. The Biden campaign is reaching out to Latino voters in battleground states during the Copa America soccer tournament, which starts today. It unveiled a new 7-figure ad buy that the campaign is using to try to win over this key voting bloc.
4 years ago, we were shut down. Stadiums were empty. Trump failed us. But then Joe Biden took over. He reopened the country and got us back on track.
Lauren Egan and Josh Wingrove join us now. Lauren is White House reporter for Politico, and Josh is White House reporter for Bloomberg News. White House reporters, welcome. No better people to talk about this with. Okay, so that ad, it's not as if Biden's trying to win over soccer players, right? But it's notable that they're playing it in that kind of, to that audience. We have seen, Donald Trump make gains among Latino voters. For both of you, I mean, how does this signal how the Biden campaign is concerned about these numbers and what they're trying to do to address this group?
Yeah, I think this ad's fascinating. What's especially interesting to me about it is that they didn't lean into issues like immigration in this ad. They really went hard on an economic message. That ad, goes back to COVID 2020. The same tournament obviously was delayed in 2020 due to COVID. And I think what we're seeing from the campaign is a signal that they recognize that this campaign is really shaping up to be about the economy, no matter who you are, no matter what voting bloc you're a part of. And I think we're going to see that more for them, for Latino voters, Black voters, all these groups that we've seen that have kind of been shying away from the Biden campaign a bit more.
Yeah, and Josh, what about that kind of economic pitch to this particular group?
Yeah, we've seen in some polls that people really have a sort of rose-colored view of what Trump was. They kind of credit him for the first 3 years of the economy, right? And Biden's campaign has been flailing its hands any way they can to try to say, hey, remember the shutdowns? That was on Trump's watch, and the explosion of COVID was on Trump's watch. They want credit for turning things around. And so this is plugging into that theme. There's an electoral college map angle to this as well. Nevada and Arizona have two of the highest concentrations of Latino voters. Those are tough states right now. Donald Trump has never won Nevada and is now, in most polls, including Bloomberg's poll, leading Biden in that state. So right now they're sort of trying to batten down the hatches. There's a flip side to this, though, that is scrambling this. And every call we make, it seems you get a different answer, which is that if Trump makes gains in Latinos, it's changing the question of how many points does Biden need to win by to win the Electoral College? 4 years ago, we thought it was like 3 or 4 points. And now Biden maybe doesn't need to win by 3 or 4 points. He might need to win by 2 or 3 because the vote composition, is shifting. So lots of moving parts on this one. But right now, a lot of Democrats think ultimately they can speak to all voters, including Latino voters, on the economy, try to tell Biden's story, and stop or at least, reverse what has been, what polls seem to indicate is a slip towards Trump.
Yeah, it's really important that you mentioned those states. And I was just in Nevada and Arizona on separate reporting trips, and Republicans are feeling very confident in those two states. We are 1 week away, if you can believe it, from the first presidential debate where we will see Biden go toe-to-toe with Trump. I want to play a little bit, kind of tying in the economic angle a little bit, of what Gene Sperling told our Major Garrett earlier this week.
And I'll be honest, if you want to say you feel he's old, if you want to say he seems a little more stiff physically, you go ahead. But if you say this guy is not up to the job, that he is not understanding all these difficult issues and able to perform with full strength, then I have to say you don't know what you're talking about.
So earlier in the show, we were talking about kind of the strategy heading into this, but I'm curious from your reporting, how much is the Biden team focused on kind of appearances during this debate?
Yeah, I think the Biden campaign recognizes that this debate is a huge moment to reassure Americans that the president is up for the job. Obviously, the president's age has been an issue that has been following this campaign around since the very start. They know that they need to really make Americans feel a bit more confident in the president when it comes to his age. So that's a major focus that they are going to have in their debate prep this week. And obviously, you know, there's a lot of unknowns in how a debate can go, right? You can prep for your responses to the president, but the appearance part of it is a bit more tricky. A lot of it is going to be how he responds to Trump in the moment. So, yeah, I think the campaign has always said that this is going to be the time to drag Donald Trump into Americans' living rooms. They feel like, you know, the country hasn't really been paying attention to all the things that Trump has said that they view as problematic. And so they think that this is the moment that really we could see a turning point in this campaign.
Yeah, and Josh, I mean, we're also going to see the Biden team really focus on policy, right? And kind of use this as a platform to remind voters what they're doing as president. And, you know, we see poll after poll, the economy, of course, top of mind for people. We see the economy looking one way on paper, but voters that we all talk to tell us time and time again, they're not really feeling it. In your reporting, what is the administration doing to kind of you know, prepare for that argument and kind of move their, you know, ways to address things like inflation and rising costs of things and all of that?
Yeah, they've been ramping up a bit of an inflation push because the data have been kind of coming a little bit in their favor. And one thing that Biden has been hoping for is that interest rates will start falling. He's been talking about this a bit, not so much lately. It hasn't happened yet. The Fed is sort of staying put for now. This morning, Lael Brainerd gave a speech talking about, hey, you know what, grocery prices, some of them are actually coming down, not just slowing the rate of increase, but falling. Council of Economic Advisors also put out a report. They seem to be hanging their hat on that, that, hey, we're actually starting to see some relief on that. Will we get credit for it? Now, of course, the issue is that grocery prices have been jumping up substantially for a long time. A couple months of falling, they're still well above what they were 4 years ago, so they're not getting a lot of credit. Broadly, the reason we're having a debate this early is because the Biden administration asked for it, and Trump either agreed or called their bluff, or however you want to view it. But they want this to be a referendum on Trump. Trump wants it to be a referendum on Biden, and that's why we're going to see them on the stage next week. What seems like very early in the process, of course, earlier than in 2020.
It does, and we will stay tuned to your reporting as well. Lauren and Josh, thank you very much for being here. We appreciate it. And former President Donald Trump's lawyers are asking the judge who oversaw that civil fraud case to recuse himself. They say Arthur Engoron engaged in, quote, prohibited communications with a real estate lawyer before issuing his decision. That attorney claimed in an interview with NBC New York that he spoke with a judge on the street about the case 3 weeks before the verdict. Engoron also issued a nearly $500 million judgment against Trump back in February, which has since been appealed. And the Department of Justice is on the defensive as the judge overseeing Trump's classified documents case hears arguments over the removal of Special Prosecutor Jack Smith. We've got a preview of that hearing next. You're streaming America Decides.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy. And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun. But wait, there's more.
Experience thought-provoking.
I'm open to the idea of being a human being.
Innovative and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Don't miss
Witness true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go. With the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes, real lives, real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Imagine yourself in Manhattan with no police, no army, no mayor.
The people of Haiti stare down poverty, corruption, natural disasters, and violence.
90% of the guns that are used by gangs in Haiti are American guns.
But with an unbreakable spirit and eternal optimism.
There are days where I cry, but we can't be discouraged. We still believe in Haiti.
They're still able to look ahead with hope.
Haiti is on the brink of transformation, a radical shift. Haitians are coming together and saying things must change.
Fighting for Haiti, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen. She's gonna be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today.
I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm gonna remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was gonna be born, he was only gonna live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift, stream now on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone.
This could happen to anybody.
And sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
The judge overseeing Donald Trump's classified documents case will hear arguments tomorrow about whether or not special counsel Jack Smith should be removed from the prosecution. The former president claims that Smith was unlawfully appointed by Attorney General Merrick Garland to investigate his handling of classified materials found at his Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida. This argument has been dismissed by the Department of Justice. Katrina Kaufman is in Fort Pierce, Florida, near the federal courthouse where this hearing will take place tomorrow. Katrina, great to see you. Thanks for all your reporting here. I want to get to the crux of this case, but I first want to talk about this new New York Times reporting that the judge in this case, Eileen Cannon, who was actually appointed by former President Trump, this reporting shows that she chose to remain on the case after two federal judges had urged her to step aside. Cannon's been receiving a lot of criticism for not outright dismissing Trump's efforts to get Jack Smith removed from this case. So it's a long-winded way of saying, what should we make of all of this?
Hi, Caitlin. This is a really interesting story by the New York Times that came out today that reveals that two federal judges encouraged Judge Eileen Cannon to not take this case on. She didn't have a lot of trial experience, for one. She was very new to the position, and she also had a history of a bit of favoritism towards Trump. She had intervened after the Mar-a-Lago raid and was actually overturned by the appeals court. So she was encouraged not to take this on. She insisted on doing it anyways, and as you said, there have been a lot of questions about her handling of this case. It has been quite slow, very laborious. Even the hearing that I'm here for is one that a lot of other judges would have made decisions about these motions to dismiss just based on the filings they received and released orders, but she is choosing to hold a series of hearings and is waiting to establish the trial date for this until all of these issues have been dealt with.
Yeah, Katrina, I want to ask you about the case that you are actually there for, this effort to remove Jack Smith from the prosecution. What grounds is the Trump team, his attorneys, arguing to have Smith removed?
So this particular argument that we are hearing tomorrow is that Trump says that Jack Smith shouldn't even have this position as special counsel. He says that he was unlawfully appointed and that the Attorney General actually doesn't have the ability to just appoint the special counsel. It's something that should be done by the president with approval of the Senate. And moreover, he also says that Jack Smith's funding is unlawful under the Appropriations Clause of the Constitution. And he says that together these bases are enough to just dismiss this indictment altogether. So we'll be hearing arguments from both sides tomorrow, as well as from some amici, which is friends of the court, which is a very unusual thing that Judge Cannon is allowing for some outside parties to come in and argue on both sides' behalves.
And you mentioned both sides, Katrina. How is the DOJ going to present tomorrow to try to invalidate Trump's claims during this hearing?
So the prosecution is going to argue that Smith is lawfully appointed, that the Attorney General does have the ability to appoint the special counsel, and in fact, there is an almost 50-year-old precedent for this. The Supreme Court ruled on Nixon in the Watergate case that the special prosecutor there was lawfully appointed. Moreover, there were actually 2 special counsels that were appointed under the Trump administration, and one of those was upheld by the D.C. Court of Appeals, Robert Mueller. And then regarding the funding, they say that Jack Smith is in fact lawfully funded, that it's appropriate the way he's receiving the funding. But even if Trump is right on that point, they say it is not sufficient to dismiss this indictment altogether.
All right, we will stay tuned to that and everything else to follow that you are following. Katrina, thank you so much for your reporting. We appreciate it. In other court news, the Supreme Court today upheld a Trump-era tax on overseas investments. The court ruled 7-2 that the so-called mandatory repatriation tax, is constitutional. The judges were rejecting a Washington state couple's challenge to a tax bill on an investment that they had made in an Indian company. The outcome is important for President Biden and other leading Democrats who are pledging to pay for sweeping new spending programs with a possible wealth tax. And tonight, Major League Baseball is holding a tribute to one of America's most historic ballparks. We're at Rickwood Field next, where the Negro League's Birmingham Black Barons hosted some of the 20th century's most iconic talents. You're streaming America Decides.
Okay, so let's just start at the beginning.
Well, let me start with this.
What is at stake here?
What is the answer then?
Do you know why?
You want me to just keep going?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Were there death threats?
How is this possible?
What's wrong with that argument?
Are you saying they lied?
Have you told the government that?
Why won't you say the word crisis? You're not answering my question.
This really
Is that scary?
Does that make sense?
What do you mean? What does that mean in
Did any of that make sense?
What's your response?
What happened?
Why?
It's time for the CBS News Original 60 Minutes, Sunday on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
There is no more room in our city.
New York City is receiving record numbers of migrants.
Today, we're going to have more than 500 adults and children come through that door.
Tensions rise as shelters reach max capacity.
We don't have to take care of them.
CBS Reports goes inside a crisis cities and families are facing as they fight to survive.
The United States still has that glimmer of hope for people to come here.
Fighting for a future. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
On Face the Nation, the way to learn is to listen.
We may have a recession.
Listening to how someone explains themselves is so key to understanding their perspective.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Since you started La Soup in 2014, do you have any sense as to how much food you've rescued from the landfill?
We've rescued 4.5 million pounds.
I can't even fathom how much food that is.
And that's one little person in one little city in America. We're going to call this chicken piccata. We did 450 of these meals today.
This is the exact dish that you and I are going to have.
Yep.
Oh, really good.
Is it good?
Mm-hmm.
Having a plan of how to keep people fed should be in every single city.
If we eliminated food waste, could we eliminate
hunger? Yes.
Eating Trash, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides, taking you inside American democracy.
The most important stories on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis.
You're going to hear a lot of reporting.
It is clearly a pivotal moment.
Gun control, the economy, education.
Both sides of the political aisle fight it out for power.
Bringing you the analysis that you need.
Thoughtfully, with context.
Be part of the conversation.
On CBS News Streaming.
Welcome to America Decides.
When people say who's first to get in the morning, that would be me. Morning news matters because it sets the tone for your day, and it's a way of getting you started.
Day to day, that first draft of history, it happens right here.
We're going to uplift you. We're going to send you out your way.
We take you places, we teach you new things, and we make you feel like, it's not all bad.
People say to me, you always seem to be having a good time. And you know what? You're right.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
Welcome back to America Decides. Here's a bit of trivia for you. What's the oldest baseball park in the United States? Don't worry, you're not alone if you thought it was Wrigley Field or Fenway Park. It's actually Rickwood Field. That opened back in 1910. It was home to the Birmingham Black Barons of the Negro League. And tonight, that stadium will host 2 MLB teams in tribute to the field's past. Rickwood Field has a storied legacy and was graced by some of the best players of the 20th century, like Hank Aaron, Babe Ruth, and Reggie Jackson. Willie Mays made his professional debut there in 1948. He died, of course, this week at the age of 93. Let's bring in our Major Garrett, who is inside that ballpark in Birmingham. Major, good to see you. It looks like a beautiful day for baseball there. Walk us through this storied legacy and history of Rickwood.
Well, let's start, Caitlin, with what you were just talking about, Willie Mays. Jeff, my videographer here, is going to tilt the camera just to show you what they have recently, like 5 minutes ago, finished spray painting the stencil of Willie Mays' number here, 24. Why? Well, because Willie Mays grew up 6 miles from here. He played baseball for the Birmingham Black Barons at age 17, was the starting center fielder for the team in 1948 that went to the Negro League World Series. 2 years later, he was in the major leagues. Willie Mays is part of the story of Rickwood. How many players played here who were in the Hall of Fame, Caitlin? The answer is 182. How did that happen? Well, white major league teams would often barnstorm through Birmingham on their way from spring training in Florida back up north. So they came here to play. Ty Cobb, Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Mickey Mantle, Joe DiMaggio, all the Yankee greats, and many others. Of course, all the Negro League greats played here because the Birmingham Black Barons played here at Rickwood, as did the Birmingham Barons. When baseball was segregated, there was a white team in Birmingham, the Barons, and a black team called the Black Barons, and they alternated weekends here at Rickwood. And in the segregated South, something highly unusual occurred here. Caitlin, when the Barons played here, the white team, the black fans who came to those games had to sit out in the hot sun on the left field seats or down the right field line, a fair distance away. But when the Black Barons played and the white fans came here, the black fans sat in the best seats and the white fans had to sit in the hot sun down left field or in the faraway seats in right field. They flipped the segregated script for baseball and baseball only here in Birmingham. That is part of the history of this amazing ballpark.
Yes, sports history and also, of course, this country's history intersecting there. Is this field still in operation? And what's been done to prepare for this particular game? I know you noted the quick preparations, obviously, in honor of Willie Mays. But quite a moment, really, Major, that this is happening, given that Willie Mays just passed away just this week.
That's right. So let's go back over the Willie Mays part of the story. Willie Mays had been advocating internally with Major League Baseball leadership for years to have a Major League regular season game here at Rickwood. Major League Baseball decided that last year. There were hopes that even though Willie Mays' frail health was known to everyone, that he could possibly come here. But his passing is not only poignant, but a kind of reflection of indecision on Major League Baseball's part. They should have been here earlier. They should have embraced the Negro League earlier. And if they had, Willie Mays could have done what everyone hoped he would do, share and bask in this moment of tribute. Him dying 2 days before is almost a poetic way of saying my career mattered, my career in the Negro Leagues mattered, the major leagues mattered, and Major League Baseball still is just a little bit late to the racial reconciliation question. It's better to be here than not to be here. Baseball Commissioner Rod Manfred told me that today. He's glad that they're here, and that he wants this game to be not only representative of the Negro Leagues, but maybe a springboard to more African-American participation on the rosters of major league teams. But that is a core part of this story, that Major League Baseball could have been here sooner. Now, how does Rickwood Field operate now? Well, it has been brought up completely to Major League standards. It wasn't always that way. It sort of fell into disuse and not a state of decline necessarily, but it was long in the tooth, desperately in need of a rebirth. Major League Baseball's arrival could provide exactly that rebirth.
Major, this is just such a beautiful story that you have brought to us, and especially poignant given that Mays passed away this week. But Major, I know that you are a San Diego fan. Your team is not playing in this game tonight, but we will look forward to it nonetheless. Thank you very much for being there, Major Garrett. And that does it for us today. We'll be back with another edition of America Decides Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern. The Daily Report with John Dickerson starts right now.
Welcome to the Daily Report for June 20th, 2024. I'm John Dickerson. On the weapons of war, a dispute and a diversion. The Israeli